At 2:17 a.m., the highway was empty, swallowed by darkness and rain. A lone trucker pushed through the night, headlights slicing the fog, when something ahead moved against the asphalt. At first, he thought it was debris. Then it shifted again, slow, uneven, wrong. He eased off the gas. A man was being dragged across the road, boots scraping, body limp. Behind him, a German shepherd fought wildly, paws clawing, teeth bared, refusing to let go. The trucker slammed the brakes. The dog's eyes locked onto his headlights, pleading, fierce, desperate. The man wore torn camouflage, blood darkening the pavement. Someone had done this. Someone was still nearby. And in that moment, the trucker realized this wasn't just an accident. Whatever he did next would decide who lived and who didn't. The road held its breath, waiting for his choice in the darkness ahead. Before we start, make sure to hit like, share, and subscribe. And really, I'm curious, where are you watching from? Drop your country name in the comments. I love seeing how far our stories travel. Jake Miller had driven this stretch of highway more times than he could count. 15 years behind the wheel had taught him every curve, every mile marker, every lonely gas station that flickered like a dying star in the dark. Nights like this were routine, engine humming, tires rolling, mind drifting between memories and miles ahead. The rain had started an hour earlier. Light at first, then heavier, tapping steadily against the windshield. Jake adjusted his grip on the wheel, rolling his shoulders to shake off the stiffness. The radio crackled with static, a distant voice fading in and out, before dropping back into silence. He didn't bother fixing it. Silence was part of the job. This road was known for long gaps, no towns, no exits, no help. If something went wrong out here, you were on your own. Jake knew that. He'd seen broken down cars abandoned for days, headlights still staring into the dark like frozen eyes. He checked the clock again. 2:17 a.m., another 5 hours until his next stop. He thought about the coffee waiting there, the warmth, the brief feeling of safety before heading back out. His thoughts drifted to home, his daughter's last voicemail, telling him to drive safe, always drive safe. A gust of wind rocked the trailer slightly, snapping Jake back to focus. He eased the truck back into center, eyes scanning the road ahead. Something about the night felt heavier than usual, too quiet, too still. Jake didn't know it yet, but his ordinary night was already over. The road ahead was about to demand far more than miles from him. The first thing Jake noticed was the shadow. It flickered at the edge of his headlights, low to the ground, stretching and shrinking as the rain distorted his view. He blinked hard, leaning forward in his seat. Shadows played tricks on tired eyes, he knew that. Still, something about this one refused to disappear. He eased off the accelerator. The truck slowed, engine growling softly in protest. The shape ahead shifted again, dragging itself across the asphalt instead of moving with the wind. Jake frowned. It wasn't a tire. It wasn't a fallen branch. Whatever it was heavy. Rain streaked across the windshield, blurring the distance. Jake flicked the wipers to a higher setting, heart beginning to thud. The object jerked forward, then stopped, as if pulled by an unseen force. That was when a chill crept up his spine. "Come on," he muttered, straining to see. The headlights cut through the darkness, revealing flashes of color: brown, green, something pale. The movement was wrong. Too slow, too deliberate. Jake's foot hovered over the brake. Then he saw it clearly. A body slid across the road, boots scraping sparks against the wet pavement. The man's arms were bound, his head lolling lifelessly with each tug forward. Jake sucked in a sharp breath, his hands tightening on the wheel. Behind the man, something fought against the pull, a powerful shape straining, stumbling, refusing to let go. A dog. A large German shepherd, muscles trembling, teeth bared as it clawed desperately at the road. Jake's pulse roared in his ears. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't fate. Someone was dragging them. Jake slammed the brakes, the truck skidding slightly as the tires screamed against the wet asphalt. The trailer rocked, chains rattling behind him, but his eyes never left the scene ahead. The headlights now flooded the road, exposing every brutal detail he wished he hadn't seen. The man being dragged wore a shredded camouflage uniform, soaked dark with blood and rain. One boot was half torn off, scraping uselessly as his body lurched forward. His wrists were bound with thick rope, pulled tight enough to leave raw red marks in his skin. Jake's breath caught in his throat. Then he saw the insignia on the man's sleeve. US Marine. A surge of disbelief washed over him. This wasn't just some injured traveler. This was a trained service member, someone who had survived things Jake could barely imagine. And now he was being hauled across a highway like discarded cargo. The German Shepherd was tethered to the Marine, a harness cutting into its chest as it fought with every ounce of strength that had left. One of the dog's legs dragged awkwardly, clearly injured, but it refused to stop. Its body shook with effort, jaws snapping at the rope, eyes blazing with fury and desperation. Rain mixed with blood on the pavement, forming dark rivers that streamed toward the ditch. The dog stumbled, regained its footing, and planted itself in front of the Marine, trying to shield him even as it was dragged forward again. Jake felt sick. Someone had done this deliberately. The knots were tight. The rope was fresh. Whoever was responsible hadn't cared if the Marine or the dog lived or died. Jake's headlights stretched farther down the road, and that was when he realized the most terrifying truth of all. The rope disappeared into the darkness ahead, which meant the person dragging them was still out there. The German Shepherd let out a hoarse bark, raw and strained, as the tension on the rope tightened again. Its paws scraped against the soaked asphalt, claws sparking as it dug in, fighting with everything left in its battered body. Pain was written in every movement, but surrender wasn't an option it understood. The dog lunged forward, planting itself between the Marine and the unseen force ahead. When the rope jerked, the Shepherd twisted, bracing its shoulder to absorb the pull meant for its partner. A sharp whine escaped its throat, but it never loosened its stance. Its purpose was clear: protect, no matter the cost. Jake stepped out of the cab, rain soaking through his jacket instantly. The Shepherd's head snapped toward him, teeth bared in warning. Its eyes were wild, not with aggression, but fear. Fear of losing the man lying helpless behind it. Jake froze, hands raised, understanding the message without a single word. The rope dragged again. The Marine's body shifted, his head rolling weakly to the side. The Shepherd growled low, a sound deep and furious, then clamped its jaws onto the rope itself. Muscles rippled beneath its wet fur as it pulled back, neck trembling under the strain. Blood dripped from the dog's paw, splashing onto the road, yet it dug in harder. The rope burned against its teeth, but it refused to release. Jake watched in stunned silence, his chest tightening at the sight. This wasn't training alone. This was loyalty forged in fire. The Shepherd glanced back at the Marine, then at Jake again, eyes shining with desperate resolve. It wasn't asking for help. It was demanding that the man behind it survive. And in that moment, Jake understood something he would never forget. This dog would die before letting that Marine be taken again. Jake forced himself to look past the dog and focus on the man lying on the road. The Marine's chest rose shallowly, each breath uneven, as if his body had forgotten the rhythm of living. Rain plastered his dark hair to his forehead, washing streaks of blood down his temple and into his eyes. He didn't react. Jake knelt beside him, careful, slow. Up close, the damage was worse than he'd feared. Deep abrasions marked the Marine's arms and legs, skin torn raw from being dragged. His uniform was shredded, the fabric barely clinging to his body. One shoulder was twisted at an unnatural angle, and every few seconds, a faint groan escaped his lips. Hey, Marine," Jake said softly, leaning closer so his voice could cut through the rain. "Can you hear me?" The man's eyelids fluttered. For a brief moment, his eyes cracked open, glassy, unfocused. His lips moved, but no sound came out. Then his head rolled to the side again, strength gone. Jake swallowed hard. This wasn't just injuries. This was shock. Severe shock. He noticed the Marine's dog tags pressed into his chest, clinking faintly with each shallow breath. Jake brushed the rain away, reading the name etched into the metal, though it felt wrong, too personal, too final. This man had a name, a life, a unit somewhere waiting for him. The German Shepherd limped closer, pressing its body against the Marine's side, whining softly now. Its earlier fury had shifted into something quieter, more terrifying fear. The kind that comes when instinct knows time is running out. Jake looked down the empty highway, heart pounding. Whoever had done this hadn't just tried to hurt the Marine, they had tried to erase him. And if Jake didn't act fast, they were going to succeed. A low rumble drifted through the rain, so faint Jake almost missed it. At first, he thought it was thunder rolling across the plains. Then it came again, closer, heavier, mechanical. An engine. Jake's head snapped up, eyes scanning the darkness beyond his headlights. The rope tightened suddenly, yanking hard. The German Shepherd snarled and dug in, muscles straining as the Marine's body slid an inch across the road. Jake's blood ran cold. Whatever was pulling them hadn't stopped. It was still moving. Headlights flickered far ahead, briefly visible through sheets of rain before disappearing again. Someone was circling back. Jake's pulse hammered as the reality settled in. This wasn't a hit and run or a tragic accident. This was intentional. The Shepherd's ears flattened against its skull, its growl deepening into a warning that vibrated in Jake's chest. The dog stared into the darkness, tracking movement Jake couldn't yet see. It knew the danger before he did. Jake stood slowly, rain pouring down his back, and followed the rope with his eyes. It vanished around a slight bend in the road, leading into shadows thick enough to swallow sound. Whoever held the other end was close. Too close. A door slammed somewhere ahead. Metal clanged. A muffled voice cursed, barely audible over the rain. Jake's breath hitched. The Marine twitched weakly on the ground, a pained sound escaping his throat as the rope jerked again. The Shepherd lunged forward, barking furiously now, teeth snapping at the empty air. Its warning echoed down the highway, loud and defiant. If the person ahead hadn't known they'd been seen before, they did now. Jake's mind raced. He was unarmed, alone, outnumbered. Everything in him screamed to get back in the truck and drive. But then he looked, down at the Marine, broken and bleeding, and at the dog standing guard over him. Running wasn't just cowardice. It would be a death sentence. Jake backed toward his truck, rain stinging his face, fear tightening his chest with every step. His hand brushed the cold metal of the door, the easiest choice right there. Climb in, lock it, drive away. No one would blame him. Out here, survival came first. For a split second, he imagined the road behind him, clear and empty, disappearing into the night. He imagined calling the police from miles away, letting professionals handle it. That would be smart. That would be safe. Then the German Shepherd met his eyes. The dog stood trembling, soaked and bleeding, yet unbroken. Its body was angled protectively over the Marine, head low, eyes burning with a silent plea. Not for comfort. Not for mercy. For action. Jake's thoughts flickered to his daughter again, how she'd asked him once what it meant to do the right thing when no one was watching. He hadn't had an answer then. He did now. He exhaled slowly, steadying his hands. If he drove away, that Marine wouldn't survive. The dog knew it. And now so did he. Jake reached into the cab and grabbed the emergency knife from the console, the one he kept for seatbelts and wrecks. His grip tightened around it, knuckles white. He wasn't a hero. He wasn't trained for this, but he was here. He turned back toward the road, planting his boots on the slick pavement. The engine sound ahead grew louder, closer. Jake squared his shoulders and met the shepherd's gaze again. "I've got you," he said quietly. More to himself than the dog. Fear still clawed at him, but it no longer controlled him. He wasn't leaving. Not tonight. Jake moved fast, heart pounding as he crouched beside the Marine. The rain blurred his vision, but his hand stayed steady as he reached for the rope binding the man's wrists. The German shepherd stiffened instantly, stepping forward with a low growl, placing its body between Jake and the Marine. "It's okay," Jake said softly, not daring to move closer. "I'm helping. I promise." The dog hesitated, muscles taut, eyes locked on Jake's hands. Then it sniffed the air, ears twitching. Slowly, reluctantly, it shifted just enough to give him room, though it never fully backed away. Trust, Jake realized, had to be earned second by second. The rope jerked again. Jake didn't wait. He flipped open the knife and sawed hard against the wet fibers. The blade slipped at first, rain and blood making everything slick. His breath came fast as the engine sound ahead grew louder. "Come on," he muttered, sawing harder. The rope snapped free. Jake caught the Marine's arm before it dragged again, lowering it gently to the pavement. The German shepherd let out a sharp bark and lunged forward, clamping its jaws around the remaining length of rope connected to its own harness. Jake grabbed the harness strap, bracing his boots against the road. Together, man and dog pulled back, fighting the force ahead. Muscles burned in Jake's arms as the rope stretched, then finally tore loose with a violent snap. The sudden release sent them all stumbling backward. Jake nearly fell, but the shepherd held firm, planting itself beside the Marine again, chest heaving. Jake wasted no time. He slid his arms under the Marine's shoulders, grimacing at the weight and the injuries. "I've got you," he whispered, dragging him inch by inch toward the truck. Behind them, the rain swallowed the road, but the danger wasn't gone. They had seconds. Maybe less. And Jake knew the hardest part of this rescue was just beginning. Jake hauled the Marine toward the truck, boots slipping as rain soaked the pavement. Every step felt heavier than the last, the Marine's weight pulling at his shoulders, but Jake didn't slow. He couldn't. The engine sound behind them was louder now. No longer distant or uncertain. The German shepherd stayed tight at Jake's side, limping but alert, head snapping toward the road with every unfamiliar noise. Its growl rumbled low and steady, a warning meant for anyone close enough to hear it. Whatever was coming, the dog was ready to fight. Jake reached the cab and yanked the door open. He braced himself and lifted the Marine as carefully as he could, grunting with effort as he guided him onto the passenger seat. The Marine groaned faintly, eyes fluttering, but didn't wake. Headlights flared suddenly in the rearview mirror. Jake's stomach dropped. Someone was coming around the bend, fast. Too fast. "Up," Jake urged the dog, voice sharp with urgency. The shepherd leapt into the cab in one smooth motion, landing half on the seat, half across the Marine's legs, immediately positioning itself between him and the open door. Its teeth bared, eyes fixed on the approaching lights. Jake slammed the door shut and jumped into the driver's seat. The engine roared to life as he threw the truck into gear. Tires spun, spraying water as the rig surged forward. In the mirror, a dark vehicle burst into view, headlights blazing, closing the distance. Jake didn't look back again. He floored the accelerator. The truck thundering down the highway. The shepherd barked once, sharp and defiant, as if daring the darkness to follow, but it didn't. The road stretched ahead, open and endless, and for the first time since he'd stopped, Jake allowed himself a breath. They were moving. They were alive. The truck tore through the rain-soaked highway, wipers thrashing as Jake fought to keep the rig steady. He stole a glance at the Marine slumped beside him, chest barely moving, head lolling with each bump in the road. Blood smeared the seat beneath him, dark and slick. The German Shepherd pressed close. One paw braced against the Marine's leg, nose hovering near his face. Every shallow breath the man took was met with a soft whine from the dog, as if it were counting them. Afraid one might be the last. Jake grabbed his phone with shaking hands and dialed emergency services, putting it on speaker. "I need an ambulance," he said quickly, voice tight. "I've got a badly injured U.S. Marine and his K9. We're on Highway 12. Mile marker 47. The operator's calm voice filled the cab. Asking questions Jake barely heard as he swerved around standing water. "He's bleeding bad," Jake added. "He's been dragged. He's fading. Help is on the way," the operator assured him. "How far are you from the nearest town?" Jake glanced at the GPS. His heart sank. 28 miles. The Shepherd lifted its head, ears twitching at the sound of Jake's voice. It crawled higher onto the Marine's chest, pressing its body against him, sharing warmth, refusing to let him slip away. The Marine coughed weakly, a sound that rattled deep in his chest. Jake's knuckles whitened on the steering wheel. Every mile felt like a gamble. Every red light in the distance felt like an enemy. "Stay with me," Jake muttered. Unsure if he was speaking to the Marine, the dog, or himself. The rain kept falling, and time kept running out. The Marine stirred as the truck hit a smoother stretch of road, his breath hitching before settling again. His eyes fluttered open, unfocused but aware. "Rex!" He rasped, the name barely audible over the engine. The German Shepherd's head snapped up instantly. Its tail thumped weakly against the seat, and it pressed its muzzle to the Marine's chest, whining softly. The simple sound seemed to anchor the man, keeping him present. Jake glanced over. "You're safe," he said quickly. "I've got you. Help's coming." The Marine swallowed, pain etched across his face. "They left us," he whispered. "Mission went bad. Someone sold us out." His eyes drifted shut again, memories spilling through broken breaths. Between gasps, fragments of the story emerged. A night operation. An ambush where there shouldn't have been one. Vehicles waiting where the map said empty. When the shooting stopped, he'd been wounded and outnumbered. Rex had dragged him from the kill zone, inch by inch, refusing to abandon him. "They caught us on the road," the Marine murmured. "Tied us, tried to finish it quiet." Rex growled softly, as if remembering. The sound was low, controlled, filled with a restrained fury that made Jake's skin prickle. The Marine's hand twitched, fingers brushing the dog's fur. "He never left me," he whispered. "Even when I told him to run." Jake felt a tightness in his chest. This wasn't just a handler and a dog. This was a bond forged under fire, sealed by blood and trust. The Marine's breathing grew shallow again, his strength fading. Jake focused on the road, jaw clenched. Someone had betrayed a Marine. Someone had tried to erase the truth. And tonight, because of a trucker and a dog named Rex, that truth was still alive. Red and blue lights cut through the rain as Jake's truck skidded into the hospital entrance. Tires hissed to a stop, and before the engine even died, doors were flying open. Voices shouted orders, sharp and urgent. As paramedics rushed forward with a stretcher, Jake jumped down, hands raised, words spilling out in a rush. "He's a Marine. Severe trauma. Dragged for miles." They were already moving past him, lifting the Marine with practiced speed. 4 lines snapping into place as they rolled toward the doors. Rex tried to follow. The German Shepherd leapt from the cab, limping hard now, but determined. A medic gently blocked him. "Easy, boy," she said, voice calm but firm. Rex barked once, panicked, eyes locked on the Marine as he was wheeled away. "Let him stay close," Jake said quickly. "He won't cause trouble." The medic hesitated, then nodded. Rex padded alongside the stretcher until they reached the operating doors. There, he was stopped, The doors swung shut, sealing the Marine inside. Rex froze. A low whine escaped his throat as he pressed his nose to the cold metal, tail stiff, ears forward. Jake knelt beside him, resting a hand on his wet fur. "They're helping him," Jake said softly. "You got him here. That's what matters." Minutes stretched into hours. The waiting room buzzed with distant footsteps and murmured conversations, but Jake heard none of it. Rex never moved from the door. He didn't sit. He didn't lie down. He waited. Finally, a surgeon emerged, mask lowered, eyes tired but steady. Jake stood instantly, heart pounding. The doctor looked at Rex, then back at Jake. "We stopped the bleeding," he said. "Multiple fractures. Internal injuries." He paused. "He's alive." Rex let out a soft, broken sound, half whine, half breath, and finally sat down. For the first time that night, the fight eased from his eyes. The morning light crept through the hospital windows, pale and quiet, as officials began arriving one by one. Military police, state troopers, men and women who moved with purpose, their expressions grim as they listened to Jake's statement. Every detail mattered now: the rope, the vehicle, the direction it fled. Surveillance footage from nearby roads filled in the gaps. A dark pickup. No plates. Erratic driving. Enough to start a hunt. Phones rang softly in hallways as information moved fast, passed from one agency to another. What had been a silent crime on an empty highway was no longer hidden. An officer approached Jake later, his tone different, now respectful. "You stopped a targeted execution," he said quietly. "They were trying to make it look like an accident." Jake shook his head slowly, the weight of it settling in. "The dog knew," he said. "Before any of us." Rex lay at his feet, finally resting, though his ears still twitched at every sound. A military handler knelt beside him, checking his injuries. "This canine's actions were extraordinary," she said. "He refused to abandon his handler. That's not just training. That's loyalty." Word spread through the hospital. Nurses whispered. Doctors paused to look. A Marine commander arrived, his uniform crisp, his face tight with emotion. He stopped in front of Rex and snapped a sharp salute. "Because of you," the commander said, voice steady. "One of my men is still breathing." Jake felt his throat close. He hadn't planned to be here. Hadn't planned to matter, but sometimes the truth didn't need planning. It just needed someone willing to stop, and a dog willing to never let go. 3 days later, Jake stood quietly at the foot of a hospital bed, unsure if he even belonged there. The Marine lay propped against white pillows, bandaged and worn, but alive. Monitors beeped steadily, a sound that felt like a victory. When the Marine saw Jake, his eyes softened. "You didn't have to stop," he said hoarsely. "Most people wouldn't have." Jake shook his head. "Your dog made the choice for me." Rex lay beside the bed, one leg wrapped, eyes half closed but alert. At the sound of his name, his tail thumped gently. The Marine reached down, fingers brushing the dog's fur, and Rex leaned into the touch, finally at peace. "They tried to take everything from us," the Marine whispered. "But he wouldn't let them. And neither did you." Later, as Jake prepared to leave, a nurse handed him a folded note. Inside were just a few words, written shakily but clearly. "Because of you, I get to go home." Jake stepped into the hallway, blinking hard. He wasn't a hero. He was a trucker who'd followed a dark road and listened when something inside him said stop. Behind him, Rex lifted his head and watched Jake go, eyes calm now. Duty fulfilled, somewhere out on that same stretch of highway. Rain still fell and trucks still passed, unaware of how close evil had come to winning. But on that night, it hadn't, because one man chose courage and one dog chose loyalty.